Hey guys, welcome to Quest Givers. Today we're going to be talking about how do you get your player characters together? How do you get them to form a group?
How do you get them hooked on adventure?
If you're looking for adventure, excitement, thrills, and a dice-rolling good time, sit back and enjoy the next few minutes with Quest Givers DM Scotty and DMG. They're taking you on an epic journey through the role-playing experience every Friday. Learn the ways of the Game Master, the Dungeon Master, and delve into the minds of the players. Grab the modules each month to support the channel and play the campaign with your gaming group. You're sure to get hooked on adventure.
Hey Quest Givers, you're going to want to pick up the module because then you can follow along with what we're saying in these episodes. Also, you're going to want to join our mailing list because you get extra content, which is super cool. We're going to send you extra content every week. Also, look out for our Kickstarter starting September 1st, and so you're going to want to check that out when it happens, all right?
Now this video is all about how do you actually gel all the characters together. And we are both cut from the same cloth when it comes to, we don't like 30-page backstories. You can see a very interesting Nerdarchy video that got a huge amount of dislikes that I did on this topic. And it's, if you read the comments and you're looking on social media, this is a very big problem that people have. How do you get the player characters to form some sort of bond? And we do this in Death and Taxes in a trope sort of way where they arrive by ship. It's the first few lines of the module is you arrive by ship, and that basically means they've been traveling for a couple of months together, and they're now on a rowboat coming towards the village of Winter Bay, and that is where the module really begins. So they would have spent a couple of months together on this boat, and that's kind of where they would have formed a bond. So they immediately have this bond together that brings them all into one space. Now, what are your thoughts, Scotty?
I like to not have the characters do too much background, right? I like them to have a little bit of a background that we can work with, but I like them to keep it open so when they play the module, they can add their own flavor from their background and add to the story. So as opposed to giving me a big background where I have to kind of try to work it into the story, the player takes an active role and actually works their background into the story. I definitely prefer to do that. Also, with our module, Death and Taxes, you're coming on a ship. So, like you say, the players are together for a while, and that'd be the perfect opportunity where you could have the players actually, if you like to have a session 0 where the players, you kind of make the characters and you kind of get them, introduce them and stuff, you could have like a little role-playing session on the ship itself and get them to know each other. And it's not just the generic throw them together in a tavern and then the guy in the cloak walks up. Nothing wrong with that, but it's an overused trope, so it's fun to have other ways to do it. And the ship, they're kind of on this ship for a long period of time, and they're trapped in this environment together, and it gives you a good chance to get a little bit of camaraderie or friendship between the player characters.
A lot of people will start with things like they begin in a tavern or they begin in prison, etc. And if you've got a 30-page backstory, you as the DM have to try and weave that into the story. Of course, it's not that we believe that there's something wrong with that. If you prefer to play that way, that's perfectly fine. We're just not those kinds of DMs. But this module will work for you in that respect. It's just about how do you tie these 4 or 5 or 6 characters that you've had these people walk away and create that give you this backstory. How do you integrate them into the game? So you need that sort of common point that brings them together, and I think that's the most important thing, is that commonality.
A nice thing you could do is have the characters, maybe give them something before the game in their backstory that all ties them together, right? So maybe you want to have all the player characters from this small town, right? This small harbor town. That could be fun. Or, maybe they're all fleeing from their homeland to come to this new land, or maybe they're coming for another reason. So you can have a lot of that kind of stuff, in your game. I've played games where I've actually given them something something, like I've given them just a random thing, and and pass them out to the players, and then that's part of your backstory. That's part of why you all ended up here together, and how you have your goals, and why you're adventuring together, why you're even stuck together. So like with adventuring, you want to have the characters, you're giving up a little bit of freedom, when you join a group, and you're getting with a group of players, you're saying, we're going to play together, right? We're going to stay together, and we're going to play together. And sometimes, that kind of, you got to throw that rational thinking out. Well, why don't we just all wander off and go our separate ways? Why do we even stick together? But that doesn't make a fun game.
What I tend to do, I tend to have some sort of common problem that they have to solve. There's a beast they have to defeat, or there's something that's about to collapse that they need to sort out, or they've all been wrongfully accused of something, which is a common one that a lot of people use. So they're all thrown into this problem together, and together they have to solve. They have to create a solution to get them out of this problem. And I think that's a key aspect of it. Create a problem that they have to solve their way out of.
Yes, totally. I agree. That's a great way to get the players to work together. Once there's a threat to the whole group, then they have to kind of work together to solve that problem. And that's a great way to keep party cohesion, because then they need to defend. They kind of need to defend each other, right? if they decide to run off, they're vulnerable. So that they want it, that there's that strength in numbers kind of thing. So it kind of makes them want to stay together.
And that's going to be a common motif throughout the whole game, is that there's going to be common threats all the time. So, this is not something that you just do in the beginning and then that's it. Part of keeping the group together all the time is the common threat. People talk about don't split the party, because then you're splitting a party, and then you may have two different problems that arise, and you're half the manpower trying to solve two different problems. That's where split parties end up. And I think that's key, is it needs to be a problem that requires everyone to solve it.
Another thing we've done with our module is we've tried to give you different tasks for the different player characters. When you play a module, it can be a point where sometimes, depending on the module, someone may have nothing to do, right? They may end up with they're just kind of like, okay, my class really doesn't matter, right? So what we've tried to do is, in the module, add encounters that you can add or subtract depending on which type of player characters you have.
That's important, especially when you're designing your campaign or you're designing your story, that you do have something, who your players are. We don't know who your players are. There's thousands of different combinations. But yeah, you know who your players are, so you know what kind of needs to be in there to keep the cleric happy, to keep the wizard happy, to keep the thief happy, to keep the fighter happy, to keep the warlock happy, to keep the knight happy, to keep the paladin happy. Whatever there is, we've thrown in a whole bunch of things that you can then sort of adapt and come up with your own stuff. Again, that's what we're about as quest givers. We're giving you something to start with, and we want you to hack it and pull it apart and come up with new things to tack on and add on and make it your game.
Yeah, exactly, Gareth. That's a great point. Yeah, we want it to be your game. We want this to be your module. It's not this sacrosanct thing that we don't want you to like modify or change. We want you to change this. We want you to add and subtract, to the taste of your players, to your party composition, all that kind of thing. If you're more role play or role play, dice play, depending on what your play style is, we want you to hack this to make it yours.
On the subject of role play or role play, playing with an accent and playing with dice, there's a lot of things in here that you can use checks to find out, or a person can act their way into finding information. So we give you a variety of different responses to different subjects and that kind of thing, which helps you as the DM A, learn about what the society is all about and what can happen in the story, and B, it gives you a volume of information to work with, so that when people ask weird and wonderful things, there's going to at least be some way of you answering that question, or it gives you an idea of what kind of check you can roll, based on the sort of information that it is. I think that's important, because we're trying to balance the role playing with the dice and the role playing with the fancy accents and the nice hat.
Right, exactly. And let me tell you guys, the dialogue is great in this, okay? You could use this dialogue right out of the module and just wow your players with how good it is. It's like, I think that's one thing that's kind of missing from most modules. It's like no guidance really on how to role play the NPCs. And when you have these kind of responses to certain questions and that kind of thing that are built into the module specifically for specific characters, it really gives you a sense of how the character acts and how they speak. Even if you make it in your own words, which we encourage both ways. It gives you a starting place, which most modules just leave you out in the cold with that. They don't have any kind of guide for that.
Yeah, I think that's very important, that every person that they encounter, we talked about this in the previous video, which is on about how to start your campaign. You're creating a culture, you're creating society, but you're also doing that with each individual NPC that's in the game, giving them a unique voice and a unique way of speaking, the kinds of words that they use. This is the kind of stuff that we've been kicking around that is important. And the idea of bringing the players together is when they all kind of have they're hooked to the material, so they really have invested themselves in this material. When they say to you, "Ooh, I can't wait for the next session," that's what we want to hear, and that's what we want you to hear as the DM, because that's one, you're going to want to buy the next module, and also you're going to have a good game. That's, for us, that's the important thing, is you're going to have this great game. They're going to really enjoy themselves. So it's not just about getting the characters to bond together, it's about getting the players to bond together as a group. Because a lot of people that I've played with have never played together. So that's an important aspect of it, is trying to get the players gelled and glued together as well as their characters.
That is a great point, Gareth. And, like with all, you're saying all the hooks, there's all these hooks buried in this dialogue, right? Which is fantastic, which brings the player characters and the players themselves together to be interested in what's going on. So, yeah, I think that's an amazing part of the module that we've created. And I think that everybody will really enjoy that. I think that's a really shining part of the modules.
Yeah, and I think, when we add in things like the art and the terrain photos and all that kind of stuff, you as the DM are getting a lot of ideas on how you can show people some pictures, you can show them some artwork to give them an idea, so you're not kind of just left with nothing to work with, and if you ever feel that there's something that's missing, please comment section below or send us an email. You can find all our contacts and everything on the website questgivers.com, and we will be sending out regular emails that add to the content. So some people might give us some great ideas, we'll put those together and actually email them out to the email list, so you'll be getting more and more and more content for the modules. Whether you get them or not, it doesn't matter. You can then use that in your own games. If you're not using this module, you can use it in your own games, and it's just more stuff that you can then use to help gel the players together and create a more interesting world.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. So yeah, you definitely want to get on the mailing list, because you're going to get all this extra material, and you guys are helping us create the extra content. So if you comment and give us feedback, that is going to go out to the community to help enhance other people's games. So these are going to be kind of like living modules. We envision that the community is actually going to help breathe life into these modules.
And then by the time the Kickstarter rolls around, a lot of that content will be rolled back in. So, even though we've got static module now, when the Kickstarter rolls around on September 1st, a lot of this content is probably going to have found its way in an extra material.
Yeah, that's our intent. So to take this material and add it to, when we bind all the modules together for the Kickstarter, to add this extra content, so you'll have it at your fingertips. So I think that's a great reason to be looking out for the Kickstarter when it happens.
So thank you for joining us in this video where Scotty and I, we would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below, and we'll see you next time. Have a great Veterans Day there in the US.